technique I'm going to show you in this video comes from the dark fringes of our piano profession. If you choose to implement it in your own playing, and I highly recommend that you do, you will have people look at you straight in the face and say you suck at piano or you don't know how to read music. But more than anything else, they will look at you and say, man, I wish I thought of that. Now, if you're faced with playing these measures right here, you might do something along these lines. It doesn't seem too bad yet, right? That's actually not too difficult to do. But you probably know if you played this piece yourself, this gets pretty fast. And eventually there becomes a big issue with this passage where you have to do this. And you have to play this note here and immediately jump up there. It's also hard not to jump and then accent that E flat there. Now, I recently put out a video all about when you have jumps, make sure to move your hand early and get to that note in time. If you're thinking this is going to be the same advice, completely wrong. This is completely different advice. This is actually one of those situations where that piece of advice doesn't apply. You don't really have time to move quickly and get set. That next note is the very next triplet, an extremely fast cut time triplet eighth note. Here's the solution. It's so easy. I'm going to do this. And instead of playing this G with my right hand, my left hand's right here. I got to play E flat and G. It's literally in the exact place it needs to be. I'm just going to play both those notes with my left hand. I don't have to worry about popping the G and then popping the E flat I'm jumping to because I'm not in a rush. I can do this and then gently do this. Then while I play that note, my right hand moves to its next note. So I'm going to show you 3 different specific reasons why you might use this technique. And that right there was reason number 1. You have a jump and the other hand isn't doing anything, or if it is doing something, it's right in the vicinity and it can cover one of the notes either going up or down or back to the center to make the jump easier. Now, before I tell you number 2, I'm going to address what I said at the beginning of the video, because there will be some people who see you switching notes between the staves and they will think you don't know what you're doing. They'll think, well, you don't know how to read, because you have to do it the way the composer said. That is completely not true. Every good teacher I've ever had doesn't do that. Every legitimate pianist you listen to, like talk, almost, I don't say every, a vast majority of good pianists are totally fine with switching. But for some reason, it's kind of like if you don't curl your fingers like this, you'll get some people who have no clue how to play piano who will say, if you don't curl your fingers this far, this is how you play piano. For some reason, there's this misconception just in the masses outside of the music sphere. Maybe when you're first learning, if you were like in beginner lessons and you took a note with the other hand, you might have had a teacher who said, no. Right hand on top, left hand on the bottom. Right hand top stave, right hand treble clef, which is not true at all. But they might have said those words because maybe they want you to learn, get out of the piece what the piece has to offer you. So they want you to play it the way the educational composer told you to learn it. But as you go up through the ranks in difficulty in music, like take it, make it as easy as possible. Yes, 99% of the time, over 99% of the time, the top will be the right hand, bottom will be the left. And you want to keep the split as it was originally written. But there are lots and lots of instances where this is just a great idea. It can really simplify your life. All right, situation number 2 comes from one of the best pieces ever written. The first, Chopin Ballade. And I really want to show you right here. I like the way this is written. 1 E in both hands. Now I could keep 1 F sharp in both hands here and then play this chord as it's written. However, I find it just simpler. I can reconfigure it. The first item of business was basically when you have a jump and it's easier to kind of keep it in one place. This is more if you can reconfigure stuff, not changing the notes, but reconfigure it to make it easier to play. So for example, this octave is easy. Sorry, this way. But then here, I love the octave on the F sharps. Now watch this. A lot going on here. I'm taking the octave with my right hand, but then I'm only playing 2 notes with my right hand because I can reach this E. So the lower note of this chord, rather than doing this, it's much easier to do this. And again, just to reiterate, I'm not messing with the sound. I can do all the same techniques in this situation. There's not like a reach or a legato issue. It's just I'm reconfiguring it to make the pattern easier to do. But then ironically, a couple measures later, this one here, F sharp, to G sharp. That's actually awkward to play this G sharp and then reach this A right here while holding this octave. It's just a hard thing to fit in the hands. So this one I actually play the way Chopin wrote it. It's actually easier configuration wise to do this like that, especially as you start adding the dots in. Then I switch back to this way, and then I turn the page because this is where a page turn is for me. Here's one more of them. I could do this, but you know what? I'm lining up the last left-hand note A with the roll anyway. So why would I do this dangerous roll and possibly miss that A when I could just reach that? It's just an octave. Or if you really want to keep this separation, so much easier. So again, I'm switching back. So point number 2 is if you can reconfigure something to make it less confusing on your brain, again, without changing notes, without changing rhythm, without changing what notes have to be held, do so. You're going to see examples. You're going to think you can do this. Then you're going to realize, oh, the pedal's not down. I have to hold this B flat, so I can't actually do that. But if it's in your power to do it, to make it less confusing or easier to reach, do it. And for number 3, we're going to go right from one of the greatest Chopin pieces in Ballade to his greatest nocturne, in my opinion. Opus 48, the C minor nocturne that starts like this. Such a cool piece. Now, number 3, I think is the most obvious, simple of the 3, but I included it because I have specifically many times in lessons had to address this issue and people saying, am I allowed to do that? Like asking me permission, or like, will the community at large outcast me? Check this out at measure 14. I'm going to play it first. If I played this piece, I would do this. Now, you might not even notice what I'm doing because I have deceptively large hands. They don't look big because I don't have long fingers, but I have very wide hands. I have a very big reach. That's a 10th. This is a filled in 10th. A little bit later, we're going to do the same chord again. Well, it's a different chord because the harmony is a little different, but we have these giant chords that most pianists are not going to be able to reach. A large majority of piano players cannot reach a 10th, especially not a filled in 10th. Sometimes you get 10ths like, a white key to white key 10th, which is even more difficult than the white key to the closed black key 10th. I've had so many students just frustrated because they can't reach the 10th. And sometimes you have to roll chords. That's like another whole topic. Like, when do you have to roll chords? What should you have to roll chords? But there are other times, like in this piece, when you have these giant chords, the right hand is always right there. It can just pick up one of the notes. Again, I don't do that because I can reach these particular chords, but if they were bigger or they were like painful for me to play, I would just pick them up. And I encourage all my students, just pick up the note with your right hand. It takes a little bit of effort to relearn how to add that extra note to the right hand, but then you can actually play the chord without a roll, without messing up the rhythm of the piece. Here is like with a roll, you get something like this. Oops. Again, not saying it's the end of the world, but your hand is right there. You can literally reach it. Just play an octave. That's not even that hard. You have another one here, a major 7th. Then your right hand's literally doing nothing. Just reach down, go. So again, this one is painfully obvious to me, but I've taught a lot of people who have smaller hands who express frustration. So like, it's annoying. I will never be able to play this chord the way Chopin wrote it. And I'm like, well, you can take it with your right hand. And they'll be like, well, but then it's not the way Chopin wrote it. Like, it is. You're literally playing. You're not even rearranging. If you add a roll, you're actually changing. Sometimes you have to, I understand. But if you add a roll, you're actually changing what Chopin wrote. If you're simply taking a note with the other hand to play it as he originally wrote it, that's always good. So if you have a small hand and you really want to play Chopin, especially in Chopin, a lot of composers do this, but especially when you play Chopin, open your eyes. And every time you have a chord you can't reach, ask yourself a couple questions. One, side note, can you bridge something with your thumb? Because some people also don't know it's a technique you're allowed to do, bridging 2 keys. If you can't reach something, look for that also, but just see like, wait, is my right hand like right there? Can I just reach a note? Or is my right hand literally resting for the whole measure? Some people do these like, oh, I guess I got to roll it, while their right hand's like picking their nose or in their ear or scratching their head. Like it's doing nothing. They could just play that one note. And before we go, just want to thank you guys for watching. If you're really into these videos and you want to join a community that I'm trying to grow over on Patreon and get more musical advice there, but also just kind of support what we're trying to do on YouTube, I would encourage you to go check it out. Link in the description down below or the comments, or hopefully if I totally forgot to put it down there, my name is Ryan Apsher on Patreon too.